be trying a couple new things here. I've never worn one of these, and I've never wrapped in a suit, so we'll see how it goes. As I give my talk, I'm going to swear that I paid Father Steele to give the homily he did, but he actually had no idea. Because I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of my middle school experience and how I could have very well written the book he was mentioning about how awful it was. So my speech today is called Coming Full Circle. And if you take a look at your bookmarks, it has a passage there that I kind of used as sort of the organizer for the things I'm going to say today. So it says, God has made everything appropriate to its time, but has put the timeless into their hearts, so they cannot find out from beginning to end the work which God has done. I chose this verse from Ecclesiastes to accompany my talk today, because I feel like it encapsulates how God has worked through my life, encouraging it in many ways to come full circle. My entire life spans from a one-night stand, because I wasn't quite planned and he wasn't the right man. To be a father, he couldn't be bothered. Turns out it takes more than pen and ink to be an author. It's like clockwork when things get awkward. Seems free drinks and sex was all he's got to offer. So he hits the road and she lifts the load. But as the kiddo grows, you know he missed what's owed. It quickly shows with no male role model, riding older boys' coattails full throttle. Off to Colorado at the age of 8 days, stayed the same way despite the change of state. And I'd take the bait to bite hook, line, and sinker with a look no hands approach like goodbye to my 5 fingers. As time lingers on, it's little better except that next to my stepdad where mom rests her head at. I was born in Dallas, Texas on February 24th, 1980, and I have never met my biological father. Given that he and my mother were never in a real relationship, when she informed him of her pregnancy, he basically chose not to be involved. As such, I was raised almost solely by women, primarily my mom, my aunts, and my grandmother. Accordingly, I had a very special place in my heart for events like the mother-son mass and breakfast. My mom actually called in the middle of the homily, and I just talked to her right before I came in. So. While I'm extremely grateful for the loving guidance provided by the women who raised me, and feel like it has blessed me with a unique perspective that not many of my male friends possess, there seems to be something in a little boy that yearns for a father. That being said, I started looking early on to older boys for this male direction that was missing in my life. When I was 8, my mother met a man through mutual friends who lived in Colorado and had 2 daughters from a previous marriage. They dated for some time long distance and eventually married, which prompted a move to Denver in 1988. My mom's new husband, Paul Kenneth, or PK for short, was the stereotypical man. He smoked cigarettes, he hunted, he drove a pickup truck, he was an ex-cop, he ran an auto salvage yard. Given what I've said, it would seem like he would be just the consistent masculine role model I have been unconsciously looking for. Ironically though, I bucked against the presence of and structure imposed by this new male figure in my life. While I had never had a dad, he had never had a son. Add to this a new school where I had no friends, a developing aversion to authority, and the negative influence of my 2 stepsisters, who were already in their teens and extremely rebellious, and you've got a veritable recipe for disaster. Moms chooses to move our single-parent unit, new mister plus 2 sisters, I seem cling to their influence, then foolishly grouped with a crew of students who just knew that school was stupid and that all the rules were useless. Music and OE, kick back to smoke weed, hit that homie, jump into something with both feet. Big splash, roach clips, supposed to hold us close-knit. But if that 20's finished, then it's over, the rope slips. Hopeless, lonely and ridiculed. The picture is pitiful and me only in middle school. Little individuals stuck up against the whole world, plus brothers husky, so trust me, there's no girls. Adjusted ugly and struggled with this mud piece, cause sticking my neck out and nose in left me stuck deep. Another rough week, moms knew the phrase as well, never got enough sleep, cause she was raising me. That's the edited version, I guess. As I think they are for many, my middle school years were awful. I joke with some of my other teacher friends who work with students in grades 6 to 8 that they should be considered for immediate beatification upon dying, like Christian martyrs. Anyway, in middle school, my tendency to gravitate toward older males continued, and my closest group of friends, all of whom lived in a 2-block radius, were all in high school. They actually went to Smoky Hill, so for those of you that I went to Laredo as a middle schooler. Given this age difference, I was exposed to certain things earlier than most of my peers, and was easily persuaded, as the youngest of my friends, to engage in a whole range of delinquent behavior. I don't mean to suggest that I was a victim, though, as I welcomed these activities, since they provided an escape from my unpleasant reality. At the time, I was roughly the same weight I am today, but a foot or two shorter, and had recently been diagnosed with ADHD. Quite frankly, I did not like the pudgy, Ritalin-medicated kid I was during those years, and this manifested itself as an open defiance to teachers and administration. It's somewhat funny in hindsight that at this time I was simultaneously in my middle school's Gifted and Talented program and failing basically all of my classes. The final straw came at the end of my 8th grade year. This is a true story, my wife can attest to it. During a school holiday, I had allowed my older friends to shave my head bald all over, except for a small ring of hair that we had decided it would be a good idea to dye a color the box described as radiant red-violet. Think punk rocker meets monastic tonsure. That's theology humor. As I returned to school the following Monday, I was almost immediately greeted by a member of the administration who simply said something along the lines of, "Let's see about getting you out of here." That's an understatement. Basically, an arrangement was made where I was exempted from the final 2 weeks of school, which was more than fine by me, in return for not being officially kicked out. It was a huge blessing in disguise, because had I stayed, I certainly would have been formally expelled, which would have had extremely negative repercussions on my options for high school. When it came time to decide where I would attend high school, I very strongly wished to follow in the footsteps of my older public school friends. Thank God my mom and stepdad had a different idea in mind. Some of you guys sitting here may feel the same way, but trust me, your parents know better than you. We were living in Aurora at the time, and talk of how great the recently relocated Regis Jesuit High School was prompted them to see about having me admitted there. I'm aware that saying it that way makes it sound like a mental institution, but that's intentional. Because in my opinion at the time, it might as well have been just that. A dress code, none of my friends, no girls, not likely. With this attitude, I went about doing everything in my power to sabotage the admissions process. I think I've actually interviewed some incoming freshmen that were trying to do the same thing. So I'd imagine it's not that far-fetched for some of you guys here. I did my best to tank the entrance exam. I was forthright in my lack of desire to attend Regis in the presence of anyone who I thought might have some say over the final decision. I answered questions sarcastically, like saying "Voodoo Kitchen" when asked about my current place of worship. I think I'm getting paid back for all those things with some of my students every day. So, to this day, I have no clue why I was ultimately accepted. I guess that's not entirely true, because I now firmly believe that God knew what the school would come to be for me and mean to me. But I'm still not sure how that concretely translated into my being accepted. However it happened, it was one of the most important decisions anyone has ever made on my behalf. So I hope whoever was responsible for that decision wasn't later fired when someone above them reviewed my file. I'm pretty sure that person isn't still in admissions, and I hope it's not because of it. I initially went kicking and screaming. I wore the most outrageous clothes I could find at the thrift store and that still fit the guidelines of the dress code. Still see that happen. I was one of only a handful of students who, by the end of my freshman year, knew that if you filled up the regular demerit card, you were rewarded with a special one. Hopefully the mothers in here haven't had to learn that information. While washing windows as a jug assignment, I once told Dean Doherty directly to his face that I hated the school and had never wanted to be there. It wasn't intended to be for him, but he overheard me saying it when he called me on it. I was too foolish to back down. I said it again right to his face. The first miracle in regards to this incident is that through maternal and divine intervention, I should have thanked my mom as I was on the phone with her, my mom was somehow able to talk Dean Doherty out of expelling me upon being called up to the school to discuss my wishes to be elsewhere. The second miracle in regards to this incident is that Dean Doherty swears he doesn't remember it at all, which was surely helpful to my actually being hired as a teacher. God's providence and protecting influence did not end there, though. By my junior year, my two best friends from freshman and sophomore years had been asked to leave, which definitely prevented me from ending up in the same boat. The last time I saw one of them, he was selling watches out of a trench coat at a mall. That's a true story. The other one's doing slightly better, but not much. Anyway, I slowly but surely started to buy into the RJ vision, and by the time I was a junior, so it's true, between sophomore and junior year, something happens, I was receiving straight A's in college-level classes. My Kairos experience, as those of you guys who have been on Kairos probably know, and the guidance of Father Bershek, the Jesuit priest who taught my senior theology class, cemented things for me. And owing to their impact, I decided that upon graduation, I wanted to study to be a teacher myself. At home, I had grown closer to my stepdad until I dropped many of the defenses I had accumulated earlier in life, and ultimately felt comfortable enough to even refer to him as just Dad, without the step part. After Regis, I attended Colorado State University. I lived with 4 fellow Regis Jesuit alumni, you can never get away, and graduated with a degree in philosophy and religious studies. Upon graduation from CSU, I started researching how I could give back, something that I came to value definitely as a result of my time at Regis. And I deeply desired a retreat from the rampant American consumerism I had grown to feel was overwhelming. My then girlfriend, now wife, Megan, who is the older sister of one of my best friends from Regis Jesuit. If any of the men in this room are attempting that maneuver, it's very tricky. So if you'd like some pointers, we waited till he was out of the country. So my then girlfriend, now wife Megan, who is the older sister of one of my best friends from Regis Jesuit, still one of my best friends, so obviously it was accomplished successfully, and who had recently graduated from Creighton University, suggested I looked into the international branch of a program called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. She had, in large part, attended Creighton in search of the Jesuit experience her 4 brothers had all gotten at Regis, since this was before the existence of the Girls Division, and had heard about the program while there. We have 2 daughters, so we're very grateful for the existence of the Girls Division, assuming Dean Doherty doesn't remember by the time they grow up and can go there. I was somewhat resistant to the idea, both because I had already applied for a Peace Corps placement and because my studies at a secular university had led me to be somewhat skeptical of organized religion. It wasn't just that, it was also my Jesuit theology teachers that led me to be skeptical of organized religion. However, after my first interaction with the JVC staff, it became clear that their program was a much better fit for me. So I applied, and not long after, flew to Belize City, Belize in 2003 to begin a 2-year volunteer stint at Sadie Vernon, a last chance high school for girls. Without going into too much detail about my time in Belize, it was by far the hardest, yet most rewarding thing I've ever experienced. It was there that, while never very well, I learned how to be in a long-distance relationship, how to teach, and how to live in community. Also, while I was there, my stepdad initiated the process of divorce from my mom out of the clear blue after 10 years of marriage. No one saw it coming, as the two had recently purchased a home in Dallas with the intention of moving there together from Denver shortly after I left the country. And to this day, my final communication with him was an email sent in 2003, roughly a week after I first arrived in Belize. In one sense, the unexpected development was easier to deal with at a distance. But on the other hand, it had some deep psychological consequences for me, since it had taken so long for me in the first place to let my defenses down and actually let him in. All this is to say that in Belize, I underwent what the theologian Thomas Keating, my students in the room know who that guy is, calls the night of spirit, the spiritual suffering, death, and rebirth symbolized in the Gospels by the person of Lazarus, the dear friend for whom Jesus wept, but only after not returning to minister to him in his time of need. I emerged, by the grace of God, with a much clearer sense of how important my Catholic Christian faith was to me, and a much deeper commitment to the values it encourages. God, I thank you for the 2 men who left, because they taught me how to be one who stays. And God, I thank you for the 2 men who left, because they brought me where I speak from today. Got a lot more to say as we fast forward 8 years to clear the slate from the past stored away. Forgave the first, because nobody was born to hate, but sort of late making both words and thoughts coordinate. Once our story's straight, we dropped the fences. Doors that father blocked were knocked off their hinges. Not to mention, step pops copped an interest, then the tendency eventually lost its senses. Caught with vengeance when lust lit the wick, up to jump ship and hit them skids quick. Dismiss the distance, numb specifics, strictly business from snippets of its existence. vicious until this wisdom sank in, left with regret, didn't get to thank them for the man I am to Megan, the faith, the patience, and the banquet they miss when what they break mends. Now, almost a decade after the beginning of my time in Belize with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, I stand in a place that is both radically different and incredibly familiar. I have moved from being basically an only child, abandoned by two different potential fathers, to being the firmly committed father of two wonderful little girls, Murphy and Nora. My wife, as she was watching me get dressed this morning, said, "You should say something about how you went from dressing like a rat to now wearing a tie to school." I have moved from being a misdirected youth who engaged in many of the negative behaviors extolled in the worst of rap, to being a hip-hop artist who makes music informed by my Catholic Christian values in hopes of dissuading other young people from making the same poor decision I did. I have moved from being a student that was basically kicked out of middle school to being someone who loves learning and is a semester away from receiving his second master's degree. And as I credit the Regis community with being the most influential force motivating all of these developments in my life, it is with immeasurable gratitude that I can say I have moved from being a student forced to attend Regis Jesuit High School to a teacher ecstatic to teach at Regis Jesuit High School. Each time I'm broken, it leaves me bleeding wide open, slice deep as the ocean, sneak a peek in live motion. These be my emotions, spoken hopeful in the end, because even the deepest wounds soon tend to mend again. I'd like to thank all of you so much for your time. I'd like to thank the people who helped put this together, Carol Ryan and Susan Jansen. I'm blessed to have both of your sons this year. For all of the mothers out there whose sons I have had or who I will have, hopefully have, it's been an honor. I consider it an incredible grace to be in their presence. Father Steele, I feel blessed to be a part of your faculty. The opportunity has been amazing. And I thank you all for your time and your ears today.